Well, that's a nice feeling of power right there.
Speak up.
Uh-oh, that's a nice feeling of power right there. Don't you all wish you had that bell and that gavel? So welcome to the Rotary Club of Kerrville. Glad to have you all here. It's great to see some new faces and some faces that we haven't seen in a little bit of a while. So welcome, everybody. Please check in on your cell phone, let folks know that you are here, and then silence that phone so that it does not go off in the middle of Mr. Gipson's presentation. And I would like to ask Janelle Peralt to come up for our invocation and pledge.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, we offer our extreme gratitude for the many blessings we have in our lives here, and that current events make us even more aware of how lucky we really are. Please lend us your guidance so that we can serve each other, not just at this local level and amongst our local community, but with the greater perspective with Rotary International to help the world overcome what we're experiencing right now. And lead us in our fellowship and inspire us to do our best work. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now we would have George Eichner lead us in song.
And we have 14, we're singing Remain Standing, okay? All right, we got, and if your name is not on the list, you need to update your website. So here we go. Happy birthday, March birthdays. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, March birthdays. Happy birthday to you. Hey, all right, good job.
All right, fantastic. And now, Clint, how about you come up and introduce our speaker?
Thank you very much, President Marta. Before I do, I'd like to thank George and Charlie and Marta for stepping up and providing us 3 great programs in a row. And I also want to thank Carol for lending a hand today with our program. That's what makes good programs. So let's give them all a special thank you. Now, with all the turmoil we have in our country right now, it's fortunate that we're going to have a program today about an uplifting program about our Texas ancestors. Our speaker grew up in the Texas Hill Country and graduated from Mason High School. He then served in the United States Army as a chief warrant officer flying a helicopter pilot, including a 1-year term in Vietnam. He then graduated from Texas Tech. After that, he began a almost 50-year career in real estate in Kerrville, which he served as an appraiser, a real estate agent, and now as a buyer's agent, and has given a lot to the community, serving as the president of the San Antonio Appraisal Institute, chairman of the Kerrville Planning and Zoning Commission, former president of the board of directors of the Upper Guadalupe River Authority, and he's now serving out the unexpired term of Tom Moser as Precinct 2 Commissioner. But he's not going to talk about real estate today. He has a famous dad who was a great author. And so today we're going to hear about his dad and how his dad wrote Old Yeller. So please join me in giving a specially warm Rotary welcome to our speaker, Beck Gipson.
Morning. This has nothing to do with real estate, and that means I'm kind of off balance. I wrote my notes up kind of this morning, thought about some over the weekend, but usually I give talks to kids in elementary school and there's a different tone to it. but Clinton also specifically asked me to say, how did Fred Gipson write on Yeller? That's not exactly, it doesn't just come out of the hat. One is he was a writer. That was his profession. This wasn't one trick pony. And he mentioned heritage, and I'm going to walk you down a little bit of heritage before we get to Old Yeller. His grandfather migrated from Ireland, probably 1850, lost his wife on the way. Much later, after the Civil War, remarried, had a number of kids, and then my grandfather was orphaned when they died of the plague in Mount Vernon or somewhere in that area in like 1880. Grew up, post-Civil War, I think he was like 8. He was one of 4 kids, and I think he was just kind of passed off. And by the time he was 12 or 13, he didn't gel with who he was passed off to. I think he lived by himself quite a bit. So he was quite a naturalist. He understood nature, lived in East Texas, and later moved with my grandmother to Mason. A little bit of it is a health issue, and was a mule breaker, horse breaker to some extent, farmed, but most notably, and my dad always talked about his ability to tell stories. And if you think about it, in that time, that was the entertainment. There wasn't any TV, there wasn't electricity. What do you do at the end of the day when the sun goes down? If there's a firelight and a lantern or whatever else. And he was a storyteller. And I think my dad's eventual career, because he sure didn't start out that way, came back to trying to duplicate that, but with a different art form. The other grandfather, his mother's father, was Christopher Dischler, escaped from Germany, Alsace-Lorraine, we think, matched up with relatives in Alabama in 1860, and suddenly became a Confederate soldier, which I doubt that he had a whole lot of alignment with any of the issue, but he was conscripted. So again, you get into post-Civil War, most people escaping from that drifted farther west. He ended up in East Texas also, and that's where they kind of matched up. But somewhere in his working life before my parents and grandparents, he was coming home late in East Texas on a horse and had a favorite dog that kept a wolf off of him, turned out to be rabid. And that's one piece of the story that matches up much later. I tell that because that's how all my dad's stuff was. It was everything he ever wrote was true. It just didn't happen the same time with the same people. Well, when you tell a story, you got to make it entertaining. My dad was born in Mason in 1908. Mason County, most of this hill country, if you really do your homework, didn't have electricity until 1935 or so. So my point is, he grew up with horses and wagons, and as the really infrastructure of work was changing. Graduated from high school in Mason in 1926. In those years, they only had 11 grades, so he started at 7, and still was 18, and worked as he did everything. He went to accounting school. It didn't work out. He worked as a bank clerk. He worked as a soda jerk and for the most part, he built fence. He did outdoor work. Later on, had a string of mules and graded roads for the county. So he did a lot of things for 5 or 6 years. And that was in the beginning of the Depression, even though the Depression didn't hit technically until 29 or 30 in the hill country, it was already here. His younger brother went on to direct from high school into University of Texas. And after, I don't know, a couple of years, convinced my dad to come on and go to University of Texas, because whatever he was working at just wasn't panning out. mean, like I say, he was surviving, but I remember him telling me that at some point in his life, he just figured out that everything he learned to do, build fence, train mules, break horses, all that was about to go away. So why not go to University of Texas and get part-time jobs, which is about all he was getting anyhow, and go to school. So his choice of starting over was writing or literature. He actually entered the School of Journalism at University of Texas in probably 1932, something in that order. He went to school with a pretty open book. He was very fortunate, and they had instructors such as J. Frank Dobie, Dr. Walter Webb, who wrote The Great Plains. These were people that he was old enough, mature enough to understand and appreciate how valuable they were. And I think in a similar manner, he was older than most of the students, and they picked up on his a little bit more of a mature grab of what they did. He wrote for the what's the University of Texas Daily Texan. Okay, he wrote starting probably at least his second year, probably his first year, in the Daily Texan, and most of it was kind of a country boy's version of what was going on in University of Texas on the back 40. And as he wrote, and I have those writings. In fact, they're in a different book. A professor put them together later. You see a maturity in his writing as he goes, but it became very popular. And in 1935, I'm going to say, he got an offer from the Hart Hanks newspaper chain. They had a newspaper in Corpus Christi, San Angelo, Beeville, and I think maybe even Paris, Texas. So he got a job straight out of college before he finished for $15 a week, and that was just too much to turn down at the time. I know it sounds like not much, but this was still Depression era, and he got a car and he could eat, and what he was working on was working. I'm talking about the fact that he'd shifted gears into writing from everything else he'd known, and at least it was a move forward. He very soon was discovered not to be a very good reporter. He wanted to make a story out of everything that he did, and with a little bit of latitude, he worked in Corpus Christi. That's where he cut his teeth writing. And within 6 months or a year, he was writing a daily column. And he had the good fortune at that time to travel from Corpus Christi to Mason and on up to San Angelo and back and forth, and pick up all the stories of all the guys who had had trail drives, who had pioneered the country, who had all the things that we love to dig into now, but he talked to them. And that was a rich environment for him. And he was familiar enough with that kind of work so that he understood it, he wrote about it, and it worked well. He did that for 3 or 4 years, almost 4 years. By this time, he's, crowding late 20s. I think he got married to my mother in 1940 at age 30 or 32. She was 20, by the way. And he continued that very briefly, and I don't know exactly what happened, but he got fired. There was an argument about money, I'm sure it was. So they set out to write what was popular at the time in terms of pulp Western, short stories, Reader's Digest. See, I've got some notes on some of it, but that kind of thing, Progressive Farmer, that little snippets here and there, and had a baby in the middle of it. So that always motivates a lot. Yeah, magazine articles, pulp Western. Someone caught attention of his writing, a fellow by the name of Donald Day, who has quite a rich history, but he was at that time running the Southwest Review, which was kind of the first literary magazine of our area. And picked up some of my dad's stuff and liked it. And before you know it, he grabs him up and says, I have a story that needs writing, and I want you to do it because of your talents. And what it was an interview with the one of the last heirs of the 101 Ranch. His name was Zach Miller, very colorful character, but it was basically the story of the rise and the fall of the 101 Ranch. The 101 Ranch in Oklahoma was a very famous ranch. They did, among other things, they settled right after the boomer era. They had large leases with the Indians. They ran a Wild West show, very competitive to Buffalo Bill. So my dad and mother come here to Kerrville, up Turtle Creek, to the home of a lady by the name of Rita Rogorowski. I'm told that she was a French teacher here back in the 30s and 40s. And I'm not quite sure how Donald Day knew her. She was married at the time, but there's inklings of a little interest there. But for 2 weeks, they sat there and took notes with this guy who, you know, he was a great storyteller, and they got great information, good stuff, but it was 2 weeks worth. And my dad and mother, they talked about going back home in this pile of stuff. And my dad was just like, I got to go back and do something else. That's just too big for me to work out. My mother slowly pieced it together, got the chronology of it, and laid it back to him in a manner in which they could do it. It was a big undertaking, but it resulted in a book called Fabulous Empire. And it was a popular novel at the time, published in around 1941 or 2 by Houghton Mifflin. And it made him some money, some real money, some real, real money for the times and for their background study. His second book, a lot of people that know his work, and himself included, thought it was probably his best. It was called Hound Dog Man, and it was, if it's as close to autobiographical as you could get. It was of a young man in Mason that was taken out by this old hunter that was a friend of his dad's. Mother didn't like it because they were scared he's going to be a hound dog man. You know, in those days they hunted, they had hounds and hunted coons, and they made a living at it, especially some of the more disreputable characters. And that book was written, and Houghton Mifflin did not pick up the rights of it. They didn't care for it. They wanted it rewritten and whatever. And it took like another year or so that they struggled until Harper Brothers picked it up, and it was a bestseller, and it did quite well. The movie rights were picked up on it also, but they went for years and years and years in negotiation and never got anything done until much later. Then there's what I call the dry spell. You know, the 50s drought ran from 1950 to around 57, and that's kind of when I was growing up. I was born in 45. You know, when it started raining in 1957, I thought it was a miracle. When the editors and people out of Harper, they were still pulling on him to write more of his enriching stuff, but he tried 2 or 3 things. He wrote a book about a cowhand, trying to be truthful about how it really worked out here, and the public wasn't interested. They wanted the romance deal, and the guy he wrote about was realistic from Ozona. Did a number of books that kind of made it, but didn't grab. One was called Trail Driving Rooster, which did go straight to the children's market, was a great book, but it got covered up by Old Yeller later. They were encouraged to do an historical novel, and were researching for it and kind of building up to it. And something, I'm not quite sure what brought it on. It was almost started out as it's like a feature in a magazine. And I'll read this to you out of a biography that Mike Cox did. One of the most moving and powerful dog stories I ever heard, this was a letter to the editors saying, if I write this, will you publish it? Was told by my grandfather. It was a story of a big yellow work dog who fought for 2 or 3 hours one night to keep a mad dog off of my grandfather on his way home on a horseback. Since there was no known cure for hydrophobia, and since it was always fatal to human beings, such horrible death, there was nothing my grandfather could do but kill the dog, saved him. So there's your source. But this book was easy for him to write. Everything else had been so laborious, took a year or so. He got it done in 6 weeks. It was smooth and it was easy and it flowed. and my mother used to say that she cried 5 times in 5 edits. The book was an instant hit. It just grabbed. And some of it was, my dad's writing was very elemental. It wasn't steered toward children, but it's easy to read. And it was one of the first times that teachers with children would force them to read something that had pain to it, had a tough ending, had a life story to it. Disney picks it up. The book was a bestseller. It was doing great, but obviously getting picked up by Disney was a big boost, and it just perpetuated. The other part that's so exceptional is that rarely does a good writing get duplicated well in a movie form. And in this case, they did very well, exceptionally well. Cut one chapter, they cut the bullfight chapter out. It was too hard to film. And frankly, later he kind of admitted, he says, it probably slowed the plot down a little bit. The only other exception was they argued for a long time to cut out the kill the dog scene. And the compromise was to not kill the dog immediately, but to put him up in a pen and give him a chance, which isn't the way the book read or the way things would have happened in the 1860s when this occurred. And that's kind of how Old Yeller was written. It was a first in children's literature and entertainment. That was the same year, it copyrighted 1956. It was the same year that Charlotte's Web was written. Great book. And I didn't learn this until much later. Charlotte's Web became a Newbery Award winner by 2 votes. And ever since that time, they have since had Newbery honors, otherwise recognizing books that didn't quite make it. I find that kind of interesting. Old Yeller was, they won't call it a sequel. It wasn't a sequel. He used the same characters 6 or 8 years later in a book called Savage Sam. And it was based on the actual capture of the Lehman brothers over in Lowell Valley, or kind of Fredericksburg Mason area. A different kind of book. It was a chase, and a very well written book. It did well, but it was really massacred by the critics being too rough on children. In today's world, you'd laugh at that if you read that book again. Same actors were in the subsequent movie. The movie, unlike Old Yeller, did not capture the essence of the book. I don't say it was a failure, but it wasn't anywhere like it. Overall, my dad's writing was skillfully simple, and which resulted in kind of a confused category between adult and children readers. He really thought of himself as a storyteller, and not a literary lion. I'm going to read you something that points it out without getting too lengthy, but it tells a lot about what I'm trying to say. In 1959, I'm not sure where he was, but he had to write a letter of acceptance of an award. It wasn't the Newbery Award. I think it was called the Young Reader's Choice Award. I don't know that much about it, but it was important to him. And he could not go. He could not go to accept it. And I'm going to read you, this was so moving to Harper that they went ahead and published it later. And pardon me if I get a little at ease whenever I deal with my parents and read this. I get a little emotional, but it's okay. In his response, he says, I wish to commend members of your organization and those of similar ones elsewhere for giving young readers an opportunity to choose what they read. For to my mind, supervised reading, like supervised play, is fine up to a certain point beyond which it begins to stifle. For instance, I still resent Shakespeare, not because he wasn't a great writer, but because some misguided teacher tried to shove Hamlet down my throat before I even learned there was a place called the British Isles. With my background of cotton picking and coon hunting and wild mule breaking, there wasn't anything to which I could relate to Hamlet, which is another way of saying how proud I am and how fortunate I am that with Old Yeller, I was able to break through that barrier of inexperience and limited knowledge that stands between every writer and his potential readers, and to do it in such a manner that children not only accepted what I had to say, but felt that it had meaning. And I know that they felt about it because otherwise they never would have voted me the award. So this award was voted on by children. For this is a thing about child readers that every writer can be certain of. They will tell him of the truth about any book he writes. They do not read what the long-haired capital L literary critics have to say about a book. They are in no way concerned with the fact that the author may have grown up as a patch-seeded kid in a dryland Texas farm, and that he had little formal education, that at the age of 51, he is still awkward, inarticulate, and pathetically out of his element in any large city. Nor do they care whether or not his book has literary significance or any sort of symbolism. All they ask is that he write a simple and honest tale about people and things they can understand and with which they can identify themselves. If he does that, they'll read his work. If he doesn't, they won't. And a simple tale about a boy and a dog is all there is about Old Yeller, all there are meant for it to be. If any such vague and indefinable qualities as significance or symbolism are to be found in the book, they sneaked in on the sly, and I apologize for their presence. For to my way of thinking, the tale, the oldest and simplest form of storytelling, is still the best form of storytelling. I have been asked repeatedly to explain what inspires me to write most of my books, Hound Dog Man, Trail Driving Rooster, Cowhand, etc., about boys and dogs and horses and adventures among the wild creatures of the outdoors. To attempt answering such a question is like trying to explain how one man came to be born a towhead and the next with a long upper lip. All I can say is it just happened that way. It just happens that I love boys and dogs and horses and wild creatures in their natural habitat, just as I resent big cities and traffic jam streets and screaming, snarling dog-eat-dog struggle of big money culture that governs my life, whether I like it or not. I like to watch the wind waves running across the grass. I like to watch the approach of turbulent thunderstorm. I like to hear the quail calling to each other when I wake up in the mornings. I like to see the high-flying geese riding the lift of the first cold front to come rolling out of the north at the beginning of winter. I like to listen to the trail cry of a bell-voiced hound driving hard after a fox, to watch hummingbirds feeding among the yard flowers while I shell a mess of black-eyed peas for supper. I like the smell of new mown hay, the rank scent of a sweaty horse, the blaring of old range cows calling to their calves, the swift flight of wild doves seeking their roosts in the afterglow of the sunset. I like to see the flirt of a buck's deer tail as he charges in the brush thicket, to listen to the yelp of a wild gobbler down in a deep canyon, to hear the tail popping splash of a feeding bass as he breaks the surface of a quiet pool. To me, these things have meaning. They give a gift of spirit in a way that no man-made thing has ever done. They are basic, elemental, eternal. I think they will be here long after I'm gone and after you are gone. If I have any religion, it is the religion of nature. So as might be expected of any religious fanatic, I try to sell my religion to others. In my books, I write of those things that have meaning to me, hoping to communicate to my readers some understanding and appreciation for the rightness and fitness of a world that man seems furiously bent upon destroying. Whether or not I got across any of my religion to the young readers of Old Yeller, I have no way of knowing. All I can be certain of is that something in the book must have struck fire, which is a long step in the right direction for any writer. For this and for the honor of the recognition you so kindly extend to me, I'm proud and very grateful. I thank you all. Yeah. Yeah, that's my dad talking. I get a little choked up with it, but now I'm wide open for questions, so I can kind of change the subject. Please don't hold back.
David,
Yes, sir.
you ever think about being a writer?
I've written appraisal reports in the Hill Country, Texas for about 45 years, and that's creative writing. Yeah, no, I mean, to the extent you're talking about, no. Yes.
What year did Disney produce the movie?
1957. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Well, the movie was produced in 1957. Yes. Sure.
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. When I was a little kid, my mom used to read that story, oh yeah, with my brother. Fascinating. I couldn't wait for bedtime. Just get to hear the next chapter of the book. And had no idea someday I'd meet you. As long as I've known you, I did not know that was your father.
Yeah. We grew up in Mason, both those. Yes, ma'am. This statue in 1999, the Mason Library got big funding from a lot of it was Bevan Eckert, who actually had gone to school with my dad a little bit at University of Texas. He was from Mason. His wife had been a librarian in Florida for years. They had no children. They'd been very successful. His and other money let them build a new library in Mason. And in doing so, they engaged an artist from Texas Tech, a sculptor who did, at kind of my help and guidance with others, what we think Old Yeller looked like. And this is a miniature of a large statue that sits in the front of the library in Mason, Texas today. Old Yeller probably was the closest thing we know to today is not like you see in the movie. That was a great, big, huge, wonderful dog, but that wasn't what he was like. He was likely a black-mouthed yellow cur, which was a very common dog in the cattle country in East Texas. They were slick-haired. They were good family dogs, very protective, and they were also good cow dogs. And almost every family had one. Did they all look alike? Absolutely not. But that's what Old Yeller was like. Probably, if you look at this statue and think of a 60-pound dog, that's probably what you're looking at. A hound with a stub tail and good skills. Yes, sir. I don't know the answer. Here's a Korean version. And I should know the answer. It obviously came out in German and French and Spanish and I know Czechoslovak. I'm going to say 10 to 12 languages. And obviously the movie perpetuated it. One of the really fascinating things is it's still an active copyright today, which is that's unheard of. There's only maybe a couple of other books that have done that. I'm talking about like To Kill a Mockingbird and something else in that category. It's still active. One is, I think it is because a lot of it is integrated quite often in schools. And that's been of some, but it's still read by people and to their kids and their grandkids. Yes, sir.
Did your dad ever write about you in the book?
You know, my dad was the oldest of two brothers. I had an older brother. That environment between two brothers might have been myself and Mike, but it was like any other two brothers.
It'd be interesting to see a show of hands of people who have never read the book or seen the movie.
Let's do it the other way. How many people have read the book or
Read the book or
seen the movie?
Okay.
No, I'm talking about how many have not.
I know, and there isn't anybody, I don't think there's anybody here.
I'll give you an idea how popular.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember, I mean,
Yeah.
I've known
Oh,
you
yeah.
now 24 years.
Yeah.
since I moved here.
I
I grew up in Gipson, reading that book, coming here with Beck's office, and God, oh, I'm like, what? So that is a cool thing to know, meet the person, the guy who wrote something. Because it affected each and every one of us, you know, in one way or shape or form.
Yes, ma'am. You know, it's a little bit of a game changer. It was, fortunately, it was in Mason, Texas, long before paparazzi or something like that. Well, yeah, I laugh about that, but it is dangerous when you think about it today, when something gets that popular for the people that are involved in it. It was, there were some hardships. I had some peers that were jealous. On the other hand, there are a lot of people that knew my family, were happy about it. So there's a mix. It was a big thing for a small town, but and my dad had no intention of ever leaving. That was his home, and he traveled and liked to travel and all that, but Mason was his home. So it's a hard question to answer, but it was complicated. Yes, ma'am. You're talking about my grandparents. Mount Vernon, but apparently farther south too. I'm trying to think of a little town that my grandfather Dishler obviously was in. No, it's even south of that, I think. It's in Piney Woods area. It's a little bitty town. Yeah, but it's like think between Lufkin and Beaumont. It's in that kind of area. Yes, sir.
First of all, thank you for your service in Vietnam. I have
Sure.
no idea if you were helicopter. Thank you for that.
Right.
Two movies stand out in my mind as a child: War of the Worlds and Old Yeller. One of them scared the hell out of me, the other made me cry. And I'll never forget you shooting that dog.
Well, and I can tell you right here, I had nothing to do with any of it. I can tell you that in answer to some of your question, my dad did have, and I think the newspaper taught him those habits. Whenever he got onto something, no, not the rabid writer that stays up all night. He was very disciplined. He got up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, got started, worked until probably 10 or 11. Usually whenever I stepped out to catch the bus in the morning, he was in a haze. And that's just totally different from all my other peers. Hard to explain. I can remember, I think Mike Cox he has a biography of my dad that probably out of print, but it's of interest. If someone, I bet you can probably find it on internet, but one of the deals was, and this was from somebody that ought to know better, but it's like, Fred, do you ever work? You know, I mean, this is an agrarian ranch country. And the fact that he didn't, and actually he did in the afternoons, he worked on his place and grubbed pears and got his brain straight and, you know, did kind of stock farm kind of work. But we were in an area in which to write was not to work. Big change in 75 years. Thank you all.
Thank you so much for sharing that. As you saw from the show of hands, I think we all read Old Yeller probably more than once, and it certainly had an impact. So thank you for being here today. Let's see, some Rotary announcements. So you've heard Jeff talk about membership. There's some flyers on your tables today that give you a couple of pointers about members. We are getting member leads from Rotary International, so Christy's following up on those. And Phyllis Ricks, of course, is our membership chair. We talked yesterday in the board meeting about developing recruitment and retention teams. So I think Phyllis is going to take a look at what that would look like and see if we can develop some teams of people within Rotary that can help with recruitment and then help us with retention. So that's, I think, an exciting initiative, and we're looking forward to that with Phyllis. We do want to get 20 new members between now and the end of June. So keep that in mind as you're out and about and talking to people about Rotary, and as you're meeting other people through your business or through other social events or through your church. We'd love to have you bring them just as a guest and see if it's something that fits for them. We're going to do Rotary Day of Service, Louise Hayes Park cleanup on March 26th. Todd is working with the city to see what kind of event permit we might need to have. But that is Rotary Day of Service that clubs from all over are going to be participating in things in their community. So we'd really like to have a great turnout for that and keep Louise Hayes Park clean. Veterans Breakfast is coming up on April 15th. So Donna Peterson is leading that again, and there'll be more information available. But that is on the 15th. We usually do from 7:30 or 8 in the morning till about 9:30. And usually see anywhere from 80 to 100 veterans that come out for that. So if you're available that morning, come and join us. First Responders Golf Tournament, April 25th. We need some sponsors. We need some teams, whole sponsors, major sponsors. Jeff sent an email out, I think, earlier this week about the golf tournament. So keep that in mind and sign up if you're a golfer. If you're not a golfer, maybe be a whole sponsor. Do what you can for the first responders so we can offer scholarships for them. And then the luncheon is going to be on April 27th. So that will certainly be something. Last time we had it, I think we had it in the bigger room. Jeff, is that the plan again? So it'll probably be in the bigger room on the other side of the Kroc Center. So one of the other things we talked about in the board meeting yesterday was club emails and spam filters. It's our impression, and I think some of you have let us know that you're not getting club emails. So if you can, check your spam filter, see if it goes there. For me at work, they go into something called my unfocused box. I try not to spend a lot of time there, but you know. But so check if we have your email address wrong, let us know. If you're not getting information from us, between me and Jeff and Christy and other people, and even from Bruce, when he sends out the Zoom link, if you're not getting emails from us, let us know, because they are being sent. And we're going to try to do a cleanup on all those emails, but check your spam, check some emails go to clutter, some again, go to these other places. But yes.
I use Club Runner for another organization, and what we have found is if you have an email account or a Yahoo account, sometimes the Club Runner email goes to the promotions file, not to your inbox. So there is, if you use Gmail, there's for sure a promotions tab. You click that on, you may find 100 emails.
Okay.
It's all has to do with the way search gets it. Nothing that we're doing should be up on our website.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. For those of you online, Jeff Tallarico was saying that if you have Yahoo or Google, a lot of the emails from Club Runner may go into something called a promotions folder. So check that folder as well. And those are all securities that the other providers have put in place. It really isn't something from Club Runner that we can fix. So just be aware that if you're not seeing emails, see if you've got other folders where they may be directed. Yes, Ashley.
I believe, because I have email that if you mess with it and go to your settings, you like right click on that email, to go to promotion, you find it, you can go into settings and you can tell your server, hey, I want to see if this is. And it'll quit diverting it there and it'll drop it in your primary inbox.
Okay, okay, and
Whitelist.
yeah, okay. So Ashley just offered for Google, for Gmail, if you get the message, right click on it, you can allow it or change the permissions so that it'll start going to your regular inbox. So just keep that in mind and let us know how we can help you if you're not getting the emails, because that really is a primary way that we connect with all of you. Let's see. You want to do guests?
want to get Kenneth up for his
All right. We have a visiting Rotarian, Kenneth O'Neill. Why don't you come on up and make your announcement?
No problem.
Oh, they won't hear you online. Get up here.
Oh.
Good afternoon. Most of you know me, Kenneth O'Neill. I'm a Zig Ziglar legacy coach and trainer. And next Friday, March the 18th, how many of you have never heard of Zig Ziglar? Oh, everybody's heard of Zig. All right. Tom Ziglar, Zig's son, only son, will be here next week. And we will do the workshop probably in this room here at the Kroc Center. We're going to talk about choices and decisions, how to goal set, leadership virtues, and go to the website kroneal.com, KRONEAL.com, and register. We'd love to have you. And I think it's just going to be an exciting thing. But Tom will be here, and he's got a brand new book talking about the 10 virtues that leaders should have with all the challenges and everything we've been through in the last couple of years. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing some of you. Thanks.
One day we won't have an obstacle course like that, right? By the way, for those of you that don't know, Kenneth is the president of our morning Rotary and occasionally drops in to see how we're doing things, sends us a full report. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, Paul is here today. When are you going back to California? You said you were going frequently? Oh. Okay. Wandering from Rotary Club to Rotary Club. Good. Well, glad you're here. When are you gonna be back? September? November? Oh, goodness. How can you stay away so long? Kenneth, did you have a guess?
Yes, I've been trying to get this guy in the morning, but he doesn't get up that early. Oh, he really does. But he said, can I go to the noon road? So I brought him today. He is a potential road.
Good.
Alan Ayer, originally from Canada.
Wow. Good deal. Welcome. Alan, we have paperwork for you to fill out before you leave. Ashley, you have Mr. Ramos with you.
Wayne?
I've got a bride here who had 32 years married, and that's, you know, had bread over milk.
But
Teacher,
Yes.
I pushed it on kids and they would come back at me so angry. Why didn't you tell me that he died?
196 pages of true love, right? And you can blame it on the older son for taking the life of old Yeller. And Janelle, you have Chris with you? Where's Janelle? Almost born a Rotarian. Okay. I don't think I have anything else, do I?
Okay. Oh. I think the captain had to duck out. So across the aisle from us over here in the spare room is a ton of plastic eggs and bags 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 of individually wrapped candies. And so Woody over there has been stuffing eggs through the lunch, but he and I were over there before everything got started, putting one piece of candy in the eggs. They're about 24,000 eggs short of their goal of 25,000 eggs by Easter. So if you have time to sit today after the meeting to go over there and stuff some eggs, Captain and Salvation Army would really appreciate it. We probably will have an opportunity to continue stuffing prior to meetings before we get to Easter. So if you're able to help, please do so. I know they would appreciate it, and all of the kiddos that are going to be here for that celebration will appreciate it as well. Parents, not so much, because it's a lot of sugar, it's a lot of jawbreakers, and it's a lot of double bubblegum stuff. So stuff eggs. And then Janelle has been doing a really nice job getting people to come out and water the trees for us at Schreiner University. Thank you, everybody that has said yes when she asked you. With the freezing temperatures that are coming, we can't use the water bags because then the bags will freeze and burst, but you can still water if it's above freezing just by putting the hose on the ground. I only want to share that because I know we've got freezing temperatures coming, but if you're interested and able to water, with the watering bags, it takes about 20 to 25 minutes. If you're having to put the hose on the water and let it run into for the trees, it takes a little bit longer. And dragging that hose all the way to the end of the trees when it's got water in it takes somebody that is regularly a firefighter on any given day to drag that hose. But for those of you that are interested in getting a few more steps in or needing to do a little bit of upper body work, I would recommend watering the trees and dragging that hose around. But check in with Janelle and she can let you know what shifts we have and what days we need people to come and water. All right. Mike Wilson, are you wearing a pin? Woo!
By the way, it's alto pitches.
Okay, real quick, our next meeting, Brian Warren from Veterans Assistance Dogs of Texas will be here, I think, next week. Oh, Sue's got her hand up. Sure. So for those of you online, Sue was asking about Rotary International and the things that they are doing to try to help Ukraine. I was on the Rotary International website this morning and they do have some postings, and also in Christie's district governor's newsletter, they talk about Ukraine and what Rotary International is doing. I will be happy to go back to the office and send some links out to the club. Check your email, look in your spam folder. But yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. Rotary International is, of course, trying to do as much as possible. And I have one other announcement that most of you don't know about. So we were approached, I don't know, 4 months ago by a member of the Rotary Club of San Antonio, and about a opportunity for Rotary Kerrville and potentially Shriner University to partner to send a student to a peace conference in Northern Ireland in July. And so we worked through some logistics and we've worked through the opportunity. We've had some students apply at Shriner. We've picked a student. His name is Noah Platt. Really interested in peace and conflict resolution. He is a pre-med major, hoping to go into international humanitarian medicine. And so Rotary Club of Kerrville is going to do at least $1,000 to help support the scholarship for him to go. Shriner University is going to do the remaining. We are going to try to apply for $1,000 match from Donor Advised Fund from Rotary from the district, so that we can do 2,000 and then Shriner would do 2. So it's $4,000 total for this student to go. This is a student who's also very interested in Rotaract and getting an active Rotaract club back on campus. And potentially there is talk about bringing this conference to San Antonio in 2023, which means this student would, he's a sophomore right now, so he will still be around for the 2023 conference, which means he and another cadre of students could go to San Antonio as Rotary and Shriner students or as Rotaract. And then we're going to bring him here to speak about his experience after that peace conference. So I wanted you to know that we didn't have a chance to really run it past all of you, but it's one more really great opportunity for Rotary to show what we're trying to do, getting some students involved, and trying to be as nimble as we can to take advantage of opportunities, especially when a club from San Antonio presents that opportunity. Most of you know that that's Weir Labatt's home club. He transferred here, so we're lucky to have him, but he started out in San Antonio. So just another way that we're partnering with other groups and other organizations to really get the message of Rotary and Rotary International out there. So if you'll stand and join me in the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
The answer is.